press release that announced that the board had granted approval to some 133 authorization holders. And before they can have their final authorization, the NCA decided to have a strategy workshop to just have them understand what the authorization means, what the expectations are, what to expect from them in terms of the technical requirements, legal requirements, and all other requirements for the authorization. Indeed, some of these people are people who are brand new authorization holders. They've never had it before. Others are in operation. Theirs is about to expire, so they've renewed. Others are also part of the list that fell short during the audits of 2017 and have been given back their authorizations as well. So all of this will be discussed at today's event. But before we get into the nitty-gritties of all of this, why are we doing this? How important is it to the NCA? How often will this happen? What should we look out for? Why is it important that you come here today? And why must you go through this before you can get your provisional authorization? I'll kindly call upon the Director General of the NCA, Mr. John Oji, to kindly take us through this and give us his opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Kwabijan. The Executive Secretary of the National Media Commission, Mr. George Sako. Management and staff of the NCA hearing present, distinguished invited guests, the media houses present, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Good morning and welcome to the National Communications Authority. Yesterday, we had a fair sensitization workshop for the first batch of successful applicants for the FM radio broadcasting authorization holders. And I'm sure that you may have heard snippets of what happened in the media and on the NCA website. So I'm not sure that I should even repeat my speech. But for the sake of being fair and to ensure that our sentiments are re-echoed, can you permit me to read out my remarks again? In 2017, when I was appointed to lead the NCA as the Director General, I considered it necessary to take a deep dive into the operations of the authority to identify what was working well and what was not, so we could enhance our efficiency and deliver positive results. It was part of this effort that we commissioned an audit of all FM authorizations and found that the findings were quite telling. It appeared that some industry players did not care much about the regulations and the conditions of their authorizations. The fact is, if a station abides strictly by the terms and conditions of its authorization, it shall not be the subject of any enforcement measure. It is not the intention of the NCA to target any station or owners of stations. No. All we sought to do is to steer the industry towards compliance. This is the reason for inviting all of you to this sensitization workshop this morning. It is important to know that frequencies are national assets, held in trust by the authority and assigned to specific users for a period of subject to specific conditions. They are not assigned to users in perpetuity. Again, frequencies are not assigned to users in perpetuity. As such, it is important that you understand the terms and conditions of your authorization so that you comply with them. We do not want any situation where authorization holders do claim ignorance of the conditions for operating the service. As a matter of fact, it is unpleasant for us to suspend stations and revoke authorizations. Our duty is to enforce So please help us by paying attention to the presentations that the team from the NCA and the National Media Commission will deliver to you this morning. Please ask questions about the parts you do not understand or appear ambiguous. Clarify them before you leave here. It is worth noting that over the last 4 years, the NCA has invested in broadcast monitoring systems, spectrum monitoring tools, and commenced automation of the spectrum management process. We are reducing subjectivity and introducing more objective mechanisms to ensure consistency, transparency, and accountability, which are part of our guiding core values. In January 2022, the NCA will roll out an automated spectrum management system, which will also assist with the administrative regulations of authorizations, enhance our work by compiling all standard tags within one environment with a relevant dashboard to aid officers in managing tasks, automatically presenting technical results based on pre-configured technical workflows, and allowing automatic data sharing, among others. It is necessary that we carry the industry along so you can also make appropriate adaptations to the benefit from the improvements in authorities' operations. The NCA is committed to enhancing stakeholder engagements to facilitate compliance, and we hope you will do your best to do what is required of you after this workshop. There will be more stakeholder engagements in the coming days. Please stay tuned. It is worth noting that other regulators in West Africa have taken note of the investments we have made in monitoring systems and tools and have embarked on steady visits for international benchmarking. As we speak, right here at NCA on the 5th floor, we have a delegation from the Senegalese regulator who are here on a steady visit to learn more about our quality of service tools and processes. We've had recent visits also from delegations from Gambia and Liberia. Ladies and gentlemen, Section 3D of the National Communication Act 2008 Act 769 mandates the NCA to regulate and monitor holders of frequency authorization in consultation with the National Media Commission, where appropriate. This is the reason why the NCA and NMC signed a memorandum of cooperation earlier this year to harness the provisions of the enabling legislations of both institutions to comprehensively regulate the broadcasting sector in Ghana. The cooperation provides a mechanism for the state to address the challenges with the broadcasting of unwholesome content on radio and TV. NMC has a mandate to oversee content but does not have the punitive powers. The NCA has the punitive powers under the law but does not have the mandate to regulate content. Upon the recommendation of the NMC and NCA, is able to legally apply sanctions where necessary. That is why we have invited NMC to speak to you in respect of their own guideline for broadcasting content. Please apply yourself and get the most out of this workshop. It is my hope that all of you will be able to carry out your broadcasting operations sustainably, contribute effectively to the socio-economic development of our country, and attain your primary objectives for investing in the broadcasting sector. As I conclude my remarks, I would like to acknowledge some of the key stakeholders who have assisted us in diverse ways that have culminated to today's sensitization. My profoundest appreciation goes to the Honorable Ursula Owusu-Ekufo, Minister for Communications and Digitization, who provided timely policy direction, and I want to publicly state this. The new board of NCA, chaired by Mr. Isaac and Osebunsu, prioritized the approval of this application on their first day at the helm, and we need to commend them. The immediate past board of the NCA, chaired by Mr. Kweku Sechiado, also deserve commendation for seeing some of the initiatives through. There are other people who have contributed to where we are today with a broadcast of authorization, and I wish to acknowledge them. And I want to thank them for all the work that they have done in bringing us to this far. The Honorable Kojo Ponkroma, Minister for Communications, the Parliamentary Select Committee on Communications of the 8th Parliament, chaired by Honorable Cynthia Morrison, and a ranking member, Honorable A.B.A. Hussein, as well as the entire membership of the Select Committee on Communications of the 7th Parliament, the Chairman and Commissioners of the National Media Commission. We also want to thank the media and the civil society organizations whose activism provide valuable reviews of our work. And lastly, but not the least, the management and staff of the NCA deserve much commendation for the long hours most of them put in for processing these applications and hosting this event. Teamwork has grown over the past 4 years, and I wish to publicly state my appreciation for your contributions. In particular, I want to thank all of our regional managers who made it to this sensitization. If you don't mind, can you help me to clap for all our regional managers? Thank you for the work that you do. We appreciate your work. Finally, I want to thank all of you for honoring our invitation. I know that you cannot wait to pick up your authorization. They are actually ready. You cannot wait to pick up your authorization. But please be patient and attentively follow the presentations, which my colleagues will share with you. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much, DG, for the opening remarks. Now, also with us is the Zonal Manager for our Home Office, David Date. David, thank you for being here. We're also being joined today by Palgrave Boachidankwa, the government spokesperson on governance and security. Palgrave, thanks for coming through. So let's delve straight into presentations. Now, the first one we are having is on your legal requirements for authorization holders. And for that, we have a very, very experienced lawyer and, if you like, engineer to do that for us. Roberta Paya is currently our Deputy Director at the Legal Division of the NCA. He's worked at the NCA for the past 17 years in various capacities. First, before he joined the Legal Division as a lawyer, he had worked with the Frequency Management and later Engineering Division of the NCA, where he worked on various schedules, including spectrum management and monitoring, field inspections, and later became the head of the broadcasting unit. In terms of managerial and field operations, he was appointed as the first manager for the Tamale office back in 2011, where he oversaw operations in the then 3 northern regions. He later turned to the head office in Accra and continued serving with the Engineering Division until he was transferred to Legal Division, where he currently serves as the Deputy Director. So when Napea comes through to you, he's coming to you knowing very well what he sees on the ground, what he used to see on the ground whilst the regional manager, and then what he knows the infractions are as pertains to the law with the authorization. So please pay particular attention to him, because he's bringing to you the mistakes that you often commit in your operations and why you end up being sanctioned by us. And I'm sure he'll state this over and over again. We do not take delight in sanctioning anybody. And I'm sure Apaya would throw some more light on these issues. So, Professor Apaya, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Jan. Thanks for the generous introduction. I hope I'll be able to live up to the your expectation for the accolades you have given to me. I'm not here alone. My boss, who is the Director Legal, Dr. Foko Ibisen, will be joining us to provide support. He, under his leadership, the legal division have been able to support the work of the authority when it comes to enforcement. Just yesterday, he was in court, my boss, the Director Legal, successfully defended one of our regulatory actions at the Court of Appeal, which is the reclassification of the FM broadcasting stations in Ghana, which we undertook some time ago. The matter went to the High Court. We're successful. The people who took us to the court, multimedia group, of course, appealed to the Court of Appeal. Yesterday, a decision was made and we're successful. So, largely, we try to follow the law, and that is why our decisions end up being upheld by the courts. So, just to add to what Mr. Jan has said, my conversation with you here this morning will not just be on the legal aspect, but will be based on what I've experienced over the years, working as an officer on the field, doing inspections, monitoring, doing port inspections sometimes, and dealing with issues of dealership under the directorship of Director Regulatory Administration. So I've worked across board, and then being a regional manager too, working with some of you who I can see here, we regularly encounter some of these issues that I will be highlighting. So just to add a few more things. Okay, so my presentation will be on the legal aspects of the broadcasting industry in Ghana. Reverend Engineer Fiamku will come and highlight on the technical aspects. So I might use some examples drawn from the technical aspects, but when he comes in, he will provide more details on that. So, this is the outline of my presentation. So just as a foundation, we have some legislations which we draw our powers from, which you just need to be aware of. You don't need to know the details, but you can, all of them are on our website. If you want to read, you can refer to it. So the first one is the Act 769. That is the NCA Act. This act is what has set up NCA as a body corporate. It is what provides us with our powers of enforcement, the functions, the board and management structure, all that is set out in Act 769. And then for the Act 775, that's where we resort to when we do our work. So this is where it is provided for which service should be licensed, which service should be authorized, and which are the services that should be registered. The conditions under which those services are to be deployed. And then it also provides the limits under which all those licensed services should operate. So this is the difference. And then, so there are the key acts. In addition to that, we have other provisions and other acts. We have the Electronic Transactions Act, which we also resort to because there are aspects of it which have to deal with devices that you use that will need to be type approved. So at certain times, when you cannot just pick any device and install without permission because those devices need to be type approved. And in this act, there is an offense created there that even the mere possession of those devices, if they are illegal, it's an offense. We also have the common one, which is the charlatanic advertisement and all that. It's in the Electronic Transactions Act. So apart from the main act, we have what we call LIs, or legislative instruments. So normally when an act is passed by Parliament, the act also makes provision giving the minister responsible power to come before Parliament by what we call regulations, and then make provision for the detailed work of that particular body or institution. So these are subsidiary legislation, and that is what we call regulations. In addition to the regulations, we have other guidelines, policies that guide us in doing our work. For instance, we have what we call the National Telecom Policy of 2005. When the decision was made, for instance, to designate one of our industry players, mobile telecom players, MTN, as a significant market player, part of the decision we took emanated from the Telecom Policy of 2005. So even though it's a policy or a guideline, they are all part of our laws. Because the Act itself gives us power to do guidelines for the provision of services. So we have guidelines for application for broadcasting, we have guidelines for application for renewal of broadcasting authorization. So they are all part of our laws. And then, so, as I mentioned, based on the work we have done with you over the years, which my regional managers are here, my colleague regional managers, they will regularly have been dealing with you on some of these issues. Normally, what we experience is that once the authorization is granted to the operators, they take the authorization and start operating. But what they fail to do is to pay attention to the detailed outline of that authorization or what is contained in the authorization. Because the authorization provides for the limit, provides for what you can do. But in it also there are obligations that we have to honor. And when you fail to honor those obligations, like Mr. Jan said, we don't take delight in imposing penalties or anything on you. But then enforcement must come in. So we just want to draw your attention to some of the breaches that we commonly encounter. So one of them is failure to commence business within 2 years as provided in your authorization. So when you are given the final authorization, it is stated in it that from the date from which you have been authorized, you have 2 years to activate the frequency. So within those 2 years, you have to ensure that you set up your system and make sure that you come on air. But before you do that, you will need to ask for an inspection. So you can also activate and commence without asking for requesting the NCA in writing to come and take an inspection. This is to ensure conformance with all the standards that we have. Because in the law, the Act 775 that I mentioned earlier on, failure to even comply with the prescribed standards set by NCA can lead you into trouble. It could even be a criminal offense. It's in section 73 of Act 775. So commencement of business without inspection is a breach of your authorization condition. Then refusal to apply for renewal of authorization. For this one, there are deadlines. So once the deadline, 3 months prior to the expiration of your authorization, you have to apply for a renewal. So if you fail to apply, what it means is that upon expiry of your authorization, nothing exists. So you cease to exist in our records. So that means if you continue to operate after this date, you will be treated just like any illegal station or some other person who takes a frequency and start broadcasting without an authorization. So this is a very important point you need to note. 3 months expiration of your authorization. This timeline provided, it is both in the LI and in your authorization. So it's very important. And general failure to comply with laws, regulations, directives that we issue. So from time to time, we come and do inspections. We realize that maybe you are deviating from your assigned frequency. Engineer Frank will come and elaborate more what that deviation, technical terms, means. So if determined by means of our equipment that you have deviated, and we have issued you with a directive that cease and desist, or we've given you this period of time to cure, and you neglect to do so, then you are in breach of your authorization conditions. So, and then the non-payment of your annual fees is very important, because your authorization stated that to keep this authorization operational, you have to ensure that annually you pay your regulatory and spectrum fees. So, and then we also, one other one, which could be a very important thing, is that apart from you complying with the general laws of the country, even the Electronic Communication Act, there's what we call breach. You can also be in breach of the law by national security implications or what is in the public interest. So it's possible that you will be in breach not just by the condition I outlined earlier, but by national security implications or national interest. I will explain what that means later. So there are other infractions in the law. Say change of ownership, transfer of shares. What we realize is that after you have been authorized, we go to a station and I mention, oh, my name is Robert, I'm coming from NCA. The person asks me, what is NCA? We've encountered that regularly. Can you imagine somebody who has a frequency from an authority, not even knowing, if the manager there does not even know what the name NCA or National Communication Authority means. So what this means is that certain times, authorization changes hands. So the ownership has changed, but NCA is not in the know, which is a fundamental, it's a breach of your authorization condition. But the authorization states that any time you are transferring either location, ownership, address, directorship, or all that, you need to write to the NCA and obtain prior approval to effect that change. Because undertaking any of these steps could lead to a breach of your license condition. For instance, changing the location. You know, the frequency is assigned for a particular area. So if you decide that, oh, I'm changing from this part of the city to another part, it could have technical implications for your coverage. So you need to invite for inspection. When Engineer Franco comes in, we will elaborate on that. So that is the reason why all these things are stated in your transition. Even in your transition, the shareholders are mentioned for a reason. That shows that this is the ownership. So when NCA comes, we know who are the directors, we know who are the shareholders. So if you transfer it to any entity without the approval of NCA, that is in breach of your transition foundation. And then if you're in breach of the law, according to Act 775, it provides in the LI to it is provided for in terms of the ownership. And then deviation from your assigned frequency. Just like I mentioned earlier, when you are assigned, there's a particular frequency you are assigned to. Either your technical equipment might be faulty or transmitter, or any part of your transmission system is faulty, and you deviate from that assigned frequency, you will be in breach of your transition condition. So normally, when we detect, because of our automated systems now, we pick it up. We have automatic violation detection, which is part of our system now. When it picks it up, you have sent a cease and desist order, which you must comply. And then exceeding your authorized coverage area. So normally when you are issued the final authorization, attached to it is what is a map of your coverage area. So if it is 25 kilometers, 5 kilometers, or 45 kilometers, you will see the map attached. And in that, normally it is stated in your authorization, the periphery, what signal strength you are supposed to operate at. So if subsequent monitoring exercises reveal that you are actually exceeding your coverage area, you will be in breach. This is because the frequency can be repeated after that coverage area. So you have no absolute right, apart from you are only protected within your coverage area. And then tied to this is the reconfiguration of your transmission system, which you need to do with the approval of NCA. The reason being that touching any part of your system could lead you to exceeding your coverage area, either be it the transmitter power or reconfiguration of your antenna systems or all that. Any of them, even the height at which you locate your transmitter, has an impact on your coverage. So you cannot do this without resort to NCA, otherwise you'll be in breach of your transition condition. So you have to keep an accurate logbook. Failure to do so is in breach. Then causing harmful interference. This one is something that our regional people have to deal with on a regular basis, especially particular times of the year. The interference becomes more. So we have even had situations where the interference is not just between one radio station and another radio station, or one broadcasting system to another broadcasting system. It's possible that we even have interference into other assigned users band. For instance, the aviation band, which sometimes makes it difficult for the pilots to communicate with the control tower. An aircraft will land and you hear so how is the pilot going to communicate with the control tower? So these are issues, and this could result from a faulty transmitter or any part of your transmission system. So when this happens, we have our system will pick it up and we immediately issue the cease and desist order. In that case, you have to immediately shut down because it's life threatening. And in the Act 775, it makes it an offense to cause harmful interference knowingly into another electronic communication system. So we try as much as possible to work within the law. And then when you import equipment without approval of the authority, any time in the authorization stated that this authorization does not give you permission to import and install without informing the authority. So the Director of Regulatory Administrations here, when equipment are being imported into the country, what you do is to undertake port inspections. But that's based on application you have to apply to NCA. I'm importing this for you. The reason being that the law provides that no equipment shall be used in this country unless it is type approved by NCA to check for safety, that the equipment you are bringing in is not harmful to any network in the country. So there are standards which you need to comply with. And then we also have provision of services not included in your transition. One other thing we notice mostly is that we go on inspections, the person has been authorized, we have gone for the first inspection, the station has been set up in one place with the antenna and everything. So in that case, the person doesn't need any additional resource from us. But after we are gone, then subsequent maybe some technician comes to advise that, oh, you can get better coverage by shifting the transmitter to another higher location. then it's okay, then let's go. What do we need to do? So we have what we call a link frequency. So he goes to pick any frequency, links the transmitter to the studio. That is invalidation of your license condition. Because even though you have a valid authorization, you don't have authorization to use that additional resource without approval. So it is not just you not having an authorization, you have it. But to use any other ancillary service, that is what I mentioned, for example, studio to transmitter link, that is the frequency, which is also assigned by NC, so you have to apply for it. So note that the guidance. So what are the implications? As I stated earlier, we don't take delight in imposing sanctions, closing station courts. It's a partnership, and we need to work with you to grow the industry. But you all will bear with me that any law which does not make provision for sanctions or punishment sometimes is not taken seriously, and that's why the law has made provisions for some form of sanctions. So this is what I call the implications of you breaching those license conditions. So I'll just mention some of them. Is suspension. You may have your authorization suspended. You may also have your authorization revoked for breaching your license condition, or closure upon expiry, or confiscation of your equipment and criminal prosecution, as the case may be. So the closure upon expiry is very important. Note here. We cannot just close your station if you have a valid authorization. Before you are suspended, you are given a notice to cure whatever defect or to present your views. But if your authorization is expired, you just be like any other person who picks a frequency in my village and start broadcasting without coming to NCE. So that is what the difference you have to do. In that case, we don't have to serve you with a notice of suspending or suspending because you don't even exist in our records. So, and then we can also decide that we are going to suspend, in which case maybe we suspend for 3 months to allow you to cure whatever, or 2 months. In terms of the aviation interference, we can say go off air for 1 month, let's ensure that this matter is cured before you come on air. We can also revoke completely, in which case your authorization is taken away from you. Your equipment can also be confiscated in certain circumstances. So the suspension or revocation can also be done on national security grounds, just as I mentioned earlier. In the law, it says Section 13, provides that the NCA can revoke your authorization based on national security or public interest. So there was this station in the Volta region, Radio Tongo is off. During the Volta secession movement period last year or so, they were broadcasting insidious messages using their medium, which of course, based on advice on national security, we have to take a decision to revoke the authorization because they went against the law. So there are consequences for all our actions, so we need to be guided. So this is a procedure we adopt. So that is if you have a valid authorization. So know the difference. The one without authorization is the one whose authorization has expired and did not apply for a renewal within the timelines provided in the law, which is also repeated in your authorization, 3 months prior to expiration. After that, it's an illegal station, so you won't go through this procedure. But if you have a valid authorization and for any reason you breach our laws, this is the procedure we take you through. So we first write to you, we give you 30 days notice. We allow you to present your views why you think your authorization should not be revoked or suspended. So it is only upon receipt of your views, and we have evaluated your views, and then that we can take a decision, either to rescind our decision to revoke or suspend, or to proceed and do the suspension or revocation. This is what we call the rule of natural justice. So it's also a constitutional provision that administrative bodies, which are given powers, need to use their powers not capriciously, but within the limits of the law. So that's why naturally you hear the person before sanctioning. So Adam and Eve's story in the Bible, when God came to the Garden of Eden, found them to have eaten the forbidden fruit. He still gave them an opportunity to explain themselves, even though he is the overall powerful person, like a God, who could have passed sentence or judgment immediately, convicted them and sentenced them, but he still allowed them to explain themselves. And having explained themselves, he then proceeded to pass judgment and then some punishment. So based on that principle, that's what we call the rule of natural justice. So we have to hear you out. Hearing you out too does not mean that when you present your views, we have to take them. It is that we have to listen to you. So when we have listened to you, we have to determine whether the reasons we have given. So for instance, we are causing interference. you need to import an equipment from outside. So it's okay, don't revoke, I'll go off air and be able to import this equipment, but it cannot come within 3 weeks. But I will need 1 month. You have provided an invoice to that effect, that this is the placement of order you have made. When we have evaluated that, we will of course be reasonable and know that you will need some time to do it. So we can then listen. If there's something you have taken, let's say you are owing money, we've given you, and you say, okay, this is money I have paid, so I've cured it within this period. So we cannot proceed to do that. So this is the reason why we give you a hearing. So we don't, and that is the reason why most of our decisions likely, either at the Electronic Communication Tribunal or at the High Court, have not held. It's because we have followed the procedure. Most of the cases that go, they go on procedural grounds. They don't go challenging that we haven't done the act. They say, no, you have done it. But the procedure you use in punishing me is wrong. Because they know that is the easy route out. So we know that. So we guard ourselves against being found wanting in terms of on procedural grounds. So closure of illegal station, that's what I informed you earlier. So upon expiration, the section 24 of Act 775 says a person shall not operate a broadcasting system or provide a broadcasting service without a frequency authorization by the authority. So continued provision after expiration is also an offense under section 73C. So providing a broadcasting service, providing a licensed service without authorization is an offense. So we have the famous case where involving the broadcasting, our partners, GIBA, which they took us to the Electronic Communication Tribunal after we had made a decision that we were going to find stations that had not applied for renewal. And then in order to then cure that and process the renewal application. The arguments went on before the tribunal. They listened to us. The argument was that even the quantum of fines were excessive, and the NCA did not have the power to impose those fines. The court did not agree with that. The court said NCA, through an amendment of our law in 2016, took away the upper cap as to the limit of fines that can be imposed. But then, our argument also was that these stations had the authorization, they were operating without an authorization. So the tribunal said, okay, in that case, you did not need to impose fines. What you needed to do was to ask them to apply as any other applicant. So what was a lawful action to take is to close them down, not to impose fines. But if there is an illegality, you cannot impose fines on an illegal station by giving it recognition. So we proceeded, based on the court ruling, to close down stations that were operating with expired authorization and ask them to come and apply for fresh authorizations. Then some other people went back. That's the 2018 one. That we had applied, and per the law, the LI says that our National Communication Authority Regulation says that 2011 says that if you submit the renewal applications and within 60 days you do not hear from NCA, your authorization is deemed to have been renewed. So that was the argument. Then we said, okay, fine, you want to hold us to our own timelines. You can only hold us to our own timelines if you also comply with the timelines as outlined in the law, which says apply 3 months prior to expiration of your authorization. So any application submitted outside this timeline cannot be seen or viewed as a valid renewal application. And the court agreed with us. So the second ruling, the court agreed with us that for your authorization, renewal application to be a valid one, it must be submitted within the timelines of 3 months prior to expiration. So just to let you know. So if you want to hold us to our timelines, you have to comply with the time. If you submit outside, it is not a valid renewal application. So as I said earlier, we can also seize your equipment for interference and for providing a service without authorization, which we've done over the years. So if you install equipment, so anytime you want to change any of your transmission network or any component, be it the antennas, be it the transmitter, as I stated earlier, you need to write to us. You cannot just go and reconfigure and install any equipment. Or if, for those, we encourage local manufacturing or assembly of equipment. What we encountered in time past was that there were these local transmitters. We had Protect Citizen transmitters, which were locally assembled, which did not pass through NCA type approval process. And so some of them ended up, because they were not built to standard, ended up causing interference to other networks. So that is why the law has made provision that before you assemble or manufacture any communication equipment, you have to have authorization from NCA. So, and then the provision of services not stated in your authorization. So there are offences outlined in the, apart from the other the civil remedies that we can take in terms of suspending your authorization or revoking or amending your authorization, there are also criminal consequences to some of the actions that you do engage in. So we just want to draw your attention. It's not that this is what is going to happen to you, but just to let you be aware so that you guard yourself and then advise the people you work with. Certain times maybe it's not the owner's fault. Perhaps he has employed a manager or a technician who may not know that his actions could be in breach of your license condition, because he may feel his people are complaining that we are not being heard in this town. So let me shoot it to 5K, because we're operating with 3K. So he said, oh, boss, let's buy a 5K transmitter. When he comes to you, they'll tell him, oh, then we need to write the NCA. That this is the challenge we are having for NCA to give us the permission to go ahead and order that 5K transmitter. So from section 73 to 81, so many offences have been outlined, including operating without authorization, failing to follow prescribed standards, knowingly uses equipment in a manner that causes harmful interference. When you obstruct or molest or hinder our officers in doing their work, it's also an offense. But we've encountered that in time past, where we went to a certain, I remember sometime, we went to Oseko Yogo, there was an illegal station. The community people were enjoying it. But we asked them to come and apply. So we engaged the ownership of the station and said, you come and apply, but in the meantime, you need to go off. So we had to quickly leave that town immediately after we took the action. Otherwise, our lives were going to be in danger. So, I mean, but it's an offense, but you have to, of course, be safe before you can run to the law. So you do not have to hinder officers of the authority doing their lawful duties. So when they come, they want to say, so the key is not there, the transmitter room key, the person who holds the key is not around. You don't have to obstruct our work. So, and then we also have section 74, normally giving false or misleading information to NCA. When we ask you to declare, we send you some forms regularly. We ask you to declare this. Have you changed your transmission system? Have you done this? Truthfully declare when we ask you to give us information. Don't give us false or misleading information. And then we also have section 76, which talks about publication of false communication. You have to be aware, as I stated. So there are a whole lot of offenses stated. So there are fines or imprisonment. So the fines range from 10,000 to 9,000 penalty units. And a penalty unit currently is 12 Ghana cedis. So you can multiply and see how much in monetary terms it will be. And then imprisonment, 5 years or both, fines and imprisonment. So so pursuant to section 72, 1E of Act 775 and Regulation 137 of LI 1991, the authority has the discretion to impose pecuniary penalty on a transition holder depending on the nature of the breach. And that has, as I stated, initially there was a cap, but in 2016 under former Director Antirama, we undertook an amendment of that act which removed the upper cap as to the quantum of fine that can be imposed. So you have to be careful, even though we don't always want to get here. So we are one of the few organizations or public institutions whose decisions are subject to review by a specialized tribunal. So as DG mentioned, accountability and transparency. So this is part of adhering to the accountability principle. Because this tribunal is set up to review decisions or actions of NCA. So when you are dissatisfied with the decision, we are not the final arbiter. You have the right to go before this tribunal and appeal that this is the decision the NCA has taken. It did not follow the law, and I want it reversed. And the tribunal has the power to do so. But of course, we try as much as possible to live by our own rule so that our decisions are not reversed, because it will weaken us. So that is why we try, and this is part of the process of engaging you to make sure that you understand. So this is the end of my presentation. Later, when there are questions, we'll deal with them. But thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robert Apaya, for your very insightful presentation. Lawyer Robert Apaya. You have the chance to have a free consultation with him for 1 day only. That's today. And it ends at 2 p.m. But at 2 p.m., premium charges apply. Until then, it's pro bono. Next is technical and regulatory requirements, and we'll have the head of the engineering division of the NCA, Reverend Engineer Edmund Fianco. I'd like to mention his name because he doesn't like me mentioning his name. That's the whole trick. He doesn't like it, so I like to do it for him. Now, he's been the head of the division since June this year, and as head of the division, he's charged with the duty of leading a team of engineers and other professionals to plan, administer, manage, license, and monitor the radio frequency spectrum for telecommunications and broadcasting services in Ghana. Now, he began his career here at NC as an NSP back in 2004, and has still been here, amassing tons and tons of experiences under his belt along the process. At the international front, he's the current chairman of the African Telecommunications Union Task Group on Development of Spectrum Recommendations for Rural Connectivity, and a member of the Technical Committee of the IT Policy and Regulation Initiative for Digital Africa, FIDA. He previously advised the administrations of Benin and the Gambia on digital broadcasting and LTE licensing, respectively. So he's a consultant to not just the, he works for us at the NCA, that's his 8 to 5, but also consulting for other nations as and when the need arises. He's also a member of the Ghana Institute of Engineers and a member of the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, IEEE. And Edmund is also a minister of the Methodist Church Ghana, and also a published author and the founding leader of the evangelistic outreach group in Kwa.life. I'm saying all of this so you understand the fact that he's coming here, one, with experience of having been in this division for the past 16 or so years, plus the fact that he understands what you guys are dealing with, and all of the things regarding authorization actually sit with his division. Plus, the fact also that he's seen some of the tricks that you guys try to employ in the field in trying to beat the system, which eventually ends up with you in more trouble than you'd wish for. Edmund, if you're ready, please come to the presentation.
Good morning. These days you have to use alcohol before. the Osofos have to legitimize the breweries because they have medicinal. So I'll take you through the technical. Let me acknowledge my team. So I'm the head of engineering, but my deputy is Mr. Benademi Saukran. So let's acknowledge him. And the head of Mr. Amia, are you in the room? Okay, so Mr. Panabi Abedu, formerly the regional manager of WHO, and now the head of broadcasting here at the head office. So I'll take you through the spectrum, the radio station, the frequency assignment process, radio classification, the status as in the statistics of the authorizations as of now, and then I'll enumerate some of the obligations and the enforcement, how we enforce them. For some of the things that Council has already mentioned, I would brush over them just so that we can save time. So the service you are providing is a wireless service, and it's using the electromagnetic spectrum. So the point we just want to make here is that the radio frequency is a part of the entire spectrum, and you see that, you know, we don't have X-rays here, but they are part of the electromagnetic spectrum. But these are ionizing. Ionizing means that they have the potential to alter, you know, the body cells, and that is why they are deployed under very, very controlled conditions, and also with very limited exposure. So you don't stay in the X-ray for long. And then the radio frequency is in the non-ionizing part. These ones do not have the potential to alter your body cell. There are people who are concerned about, we've had radio and TV wireless for many years. Okay, there is no established direct health effect except for the potential to hit body tissue. So when you do an Nigeria and you keep your phone by your ear for long, you may find that, you know, your skin is heated It's a result. So that's why we employ, microwave. These are microwave radios you will see on towers. Okay, you see these dishes on the towers. Those are microwave radios. It's the same frequency that I employed in your kitchen. The microwave in your kitchen. Just that under controlled conditions, they can heat, the food that you put in there. But the radio frequency is for the FM band. Sorry. So you see that even for the radio frequency, we have different applications. Okay, so the band is split into portions that are applied to different things, and so we are using, a portion of the spectrum, and that is for FM radio broadcasting. So it is finite in that it starts from 87.5 and ends at 108 megahertz. It being the common, and we have a mechanism to allocate it. So we have a total of 103 channels because each channel is 200 kilohertz or 0.2. So when we start from 87.5 and split them into channels of 0.2 megahertz each, we get a total of 103. However, we do not assign, all the 103 in a single location. The reason being that when you look at, this spectrum scan here, this is the shape of the FM signal. This is the shape of the signal. You see, it starts, now the center is actually the frequency we assign to you. So if we assign, say, whatever, 88.1 to you, 88.1, that is the center. And then there is a deviation. So there's a deviation, to the left, there's the center, to the left, and then to the right. Okay? And we are saying that this deviation to the left, you should do 75 kilohertz. To the right, you should do another 75 kilohertz. That gives you a total of 150 kilohertz, even though you are within a channel size of 200 kilohertz. Okay? And the planning of this frequency is subject to an agreement at the International Telecom Union that was done in 1984. How are you? Okay, 1984. So this agreement is what still continues to apply in respect of the planning of FM radio broadcasting. Now, you'll see in this image also that we have gaps to manage interference. So this is one channel assigned. We don't assign the adjacent channel. We will skip that one just to manage interference and move to the next one. So you see the chart I have here is just showing the second adjacent channel rule where 87.5, now we skip 87.7 and go on to 87.9. When we apply this, we have a total of 52. So just to say that sometimes somebody makes an application and we say that, there are frequency constraints. Okay, some people don't understand or they don't believe us. Okay, the reason is that we don't have all the 103 available. We have done studies later on to establish certain conditions under which we may be able to use the first adjacent channel. And it doesn't apply in every case. There are conditions of power, conditions of location, where the existing stations are before we can determine that we can slot one in between them. So when we are assigning frequencies, one of the principles or characteristics of the frequency that helps us is that the FM signal, they attenuate. Attenuation means a loss of signal strength. Okay? The strength of the signal reduces over a distance. So because it travels over a distance and then it weakens. And because it has gotten weak, we can repeat that frequency at a certain distance. So that helps us. So instead of having 103 or 52 stations, we have a lot more because we repeat the frequency at a certain distance. We also look at the location. Like I said, the effective height above average terrain. If the higher as the station is mounted, the reason why you use towers and also try to locate on mountains or high grounds is to help the signal travel a bit further. So we have to analyze all that in determining the potential for interference. We also look at the transmission characteristics of the station. which are the power, the gain of the antenna, which are very, very important in establishing, and also even cable losses, establishing the effective radiated power. And we analyze that. So this is a simulation. What you see in color is a simulation of FM stations. And we are looking at the location. If we plant a station here and plant another one here, there is a great potential that, you know, their coverages will overlap. And for that reason, we have to avoid this potential for interference. When we take a typical radio station, we have three key components. So we have the studio for content production, the studio. And so when we come for inspections, you want to see your studio. And then there is a transmission system, which is what actually sends the signal to your listeners. But then in between them is a link. Now, if the studio and the transmission system are co-located, then the link is via a cable. But if the studio and the transmission system are a great distance apart, then you will need a wireless connection, which Council mentioned earlier is the studio to transmitter link. And you need to apply for a frequency for this. You cannot use another FM frequency for this. And you can't pick any other frequency arbitrarily for that purpose. So the transmission system, typically, you will have, so the tower, okay, with the antennas mounted on it. Then your transmitter, the exciter, and the amplifiers in there. And then you may have an external filter, which I will talk about later on. Now, just a little advice, especially for those of you who are station owners. Okay, so these characteristics, when you are designing a station, we play with them to achieve a certain coverage, a certain effective radiated power. But then the transmitter power actively uses electricity, okay, based on the efficiency of the transmitter. Let's say if you don't even have other transmitters having that high efficiency, but let's just for illustrative purposes. If the antenna's efficiency is say 50%, sorry, the transmitter's efficiency is 50%, okay, and you have the output power is say 1K, it means that you need 2 kilowatts of electricity or 2 units of power to be able to generate that 1 kilowatt of output power. So let's say if your efficiency is 30%, you will need a lot more electricity. But then the antenna, whose gain also helps to push the signal, does not use power. But then for every 3 decibel, okay, increase in the gain of the antenna, you actually double the power. So what it means is that for a typical station, if the station says has 1 kilowatt output power and a gain of say 3 decibels or 3 dB, the effective radiated power that it will have, if I increase the power, it's not a good example because I want to, if I reduce the power rather, from 1 kilowatt to 500 watts, and rather double my gain from 3 dB to 6 dB, I would have achieved the same effective radiated power. That is, my coverage would, granted that we are at the same transmitter height. Okay, the tower is on the same height above sea level, and the antenna is on the same level on the tower. Granted that we will reach the same coverage, but then one is a more efficient design in that it is consuming less power, but achieving the same gain. And so we advise that, because one of the biggest expenses of running a station is electricity, because every time you are on air, your transmitter is consuming power. Okay, and you have to also provide for cooling. The higher the output power, the more heat the system generates, and the more cooling is required. Okay, so you have a more efficient operation if you go down on your. Sometimes they say, "Oh, I see more 5K." It also may say, "Oh, okay," but you should know what you are doing. You should know what you are doing. Now we classify the FM stations based on their location. This has implications for the fees that you pay. Okay, so those that are in the urban areas are paying more, those in the suburban areas are paying less. And we also classify stations based on the purpose. Is it commercial? Is it public? Or the public stations are those established by governments. So the GBC is the one state. So there's a law in 1968 under established DBC and mandated them by law to provide broadcasting services. And then we also have some foreign governments that have a diplomatic arrangement with Ghana for their stations to broadcast here, like BBC, VOA, and Radio France International. So community radio stations are stations for the communities. They are not for profit, so you cannot use a limited liability to apply for a community radio. You have to register a non-profit organization, and that entity is holding the authorization in trust for the community. So yesterday somebody asked the question, can you convert a community to a commercial? The answer is no. Because you need to register now a limited liability, a profit-making entity, to be able to apply for the commercial station. Whereas the community is, you are just holding it in trust for the community. Also, whereas some people can relocate a commercial station, you cannot relocate a community station. It is for the community. So you can't get angry and say, I'm taking it to another community. That other community must make its own application. So those are some, and then also campus radio for the universities and technical universities. And the coverage. So we have yesterday the court ruling that council mentioned was we're taking to court on the function of our decision to reduce the maximum coverage from 100 kilometers to 45 kilometers. But let me explain. We are not saying that if you have 45 kilometers, when the signal reaches 45, it must stop. It doesn't work like that. The signal doesn't know the boundary. Okay? It will continue to try, even internationally. When your station is at Aflao, when you get to Aflao, the signal will not know that I'm entering another country, I need a visa. No, it will travel. But there are rules. Okay? What we are saying here is that when you reach the periphery of your coverage, the strength of the signal must begin to dip. So we say that the signal strength should not exceed 54 dB microvolts per meter. This is what we use in our coordination with our neighboring countries. But in country, you see, you can get a very good signal even at 34 dB microvolts per meter. And even if you have a very good receiver, as low as 20 dB microvolts per meter, you will still get a very good signal. So we are not saying that you should not be heard. But what we are saying is that the strength of the, so when the engineers go to the field to check your coverage, they are not saying that, oh, somebody has heard you. Because sometimes people say, oh, but we still hear them, you can be heard, or you may be heard. But however, it is the strength. So they will take a meter and measure. And if the strength is below this threshold, then you are compliant, even though you are still being heard. And we are saying that anything, once you are within your coverage area, there's no limit to the power, the signal strength within. The signal strength constraint is only when you begin to go outside your circle, then you have a challenge and you have to check it. So when they do work for you, the technicians do work for you, ask them to check. And you see, when you have the map that you will get, the map gives you an idea about the towns. Okay, so you can go around the towns that are close to the periphery and take measurements. For the location class, urban, we have classified it based on consultations with industry. We further classified even the urban and the suburban. Because I recall that one of the consultations, a guy from Tamale said that, look, yes, I'm a regional capital, I'm a metropolitan area, but my metropolis and Accra metropolis are not the same. So if you are making us pay the same fees, and we're sensitive to some of those concerns, and for that reason, we varied it. So these three big boys are paying more than these people here, and these people here are paying more than these people here, and these people here are paying more than these people here, and these people here are paying more. So that is what it is. We found out that there was some subjectivity in the past, where sometimes maybe lack of a proper appreciation of the economics in some of the areas we have wrongly classified. So it's something that you can pick up with us if you feel that you have not been correctly classified. But then now we are automating it. We did some work with the statistical service, okay, to classify this, and we have put this. DG mentioned the investments we have made in automation, so that now when you select your region, all the districts in the region will come up. And when you select your district, all the localities will come up. And when you pick your locality, then the classification is already predetermined in the system. And currently, we have over 659 authorizations in all the different categories. Okay, the public, foreign, community, campus, and commercial. The commercial is in the majority, out of which 488 are in operation and 171 are yet to commence operation. Some of them, we've done inspections, there are issues they have to fix, and when they fix those issues, then we'll authorize them to come on air. The technical obligations as we have them. So at the studio, you have to have on air lights, you have to be, you acoustically treat the studio. When we come there, we check for echoes and things, so you have to treat it. There are some modern studios coming up that are built up maybe with a lot of glass, etc. But then there are treatments for places like that, so that you can maintain your aesthetics while still ensuring that we don't have reverberations and echoes, and also noise from outside. We require that it should be well ventilated or temperature controlled. If it's an enclosed space, which it should be well cooled. The people there shouldn't be sweating. Okay, they should be comfortable in the studio. This is a health and safety requirement. Then the security door locking. You may be familiar with some of the incidences where there's one popular one where a pastor went to a radio station with a crowbar. Okay, broke the glass and attacked the people on air because they didn't like what they were saying about him. And so you have to keep people safe. So when the team comes, they are checking the security of the people in the studio. And we even require that the lock to the studio should be such that it can be opened from inside and not from outside, so that somebody cannot just barge in and interfere with what is going on. On the transmission side, we also already explained the frequency deviation. We require that, and this our systems are checking this on a regular basis. Some of the monitoring systems we put in place, and you require a cavity filter. It is a mandatory requirement now. In the past, we didn't require this as a mandatory. So some of you who are doing renewal, after you receive your provisional and you come and pay, we come and conduct an inspection. And it's one of the things that we'll be looking out for. Okay, so you will not pass if you don't have a cavity filter. So please do well to install one. We specify that it should be a three-stage cavity filter. And then we also check your coverage. So all of you, when they come for inspection, they will also drive to the periphery of your coverage and take measurements and report that also. You will only pass if you have done that. We also have RDS, the radio data service. A number of you have employed it. But we say that let us know, because it contributes to your frequency deviation. So, and especially the PI codes. Some of you are using the default PI code, but the thing wasn't designed only for you. Other people are using the same default, and there have been instances. I think last year there was some interference in Kumasi, and it was also 2 or 3 stations. The issue had to do with the RDS. So it's one of the things. So if you are using an RDS, write to the NCA for a PI code assignment. We won't charge you for it. It's just to help with order in the place. We also have financial obligations, as council mentioned. So you have fees to pay if you receive a provisional authorization, either for a fresh. Today, most of you here are renewal people who are existing operators who have applied for renewal. Now you have 60 days to pay your renewal authorization fees. Now there are some of you who have grandfather debts. Okay, you are owing. We should not even have renewed your authorization because of that. But we took a decision that, okay, let's give you the opportunity, let's renew, because otherwise, if we don't renew because you owe, the next action is to shut you down. Now you have 60 days to pay your provisional authorization fees and your outstanding indebtedness. Okay, your provisional authorization expires after 60 days. So after it has expired, will you leave us with no option than to come and close you down? Because if your authorization has expired, we have granted you a provisional for 60 days, and you don't satisfy the conditions of the provisional, then we have to come and close you. So these timelines are very, very important. The annual regulatory fee must be paid by the anniversary year. By the anniversary year. So if you are authorized today, next year, a year by this time, as the prophet will say, a year by this time, you will have another bill to settle. And these are things you have to plan for. Okay, you see, without a valid authorization, you don't have a business. Because some of you are paying presenters like football players on transfer. Yeah, but you forget that if you don't pay your fees, you don't even have a station for that superstar to sit on. So this should be your, you see, ECG will come and cut your power, so you go and pay ECG. But you forget that, you know, the lifeline of the business is your authorization, and you need to pay it every year. Because yesterday, my director of finance was alerting me that the auditors, you know, keep, you know, raising audit queries. Sometimes we have to go to public accounts committee because we are not collecting your debt, and it is a function of being suspended. Your authorization can be suspended for not paying your fees, and like has been said, we don't like to do this. Now the law has also provided that fines are imposed. Okay, the fines don't apply to provisional authorization fees. They only apply to annual regulatory fees and penalties. So if your annual regulatory fee is supposed to be paid a year by this time, and you don't pay, what happens is that you will be charged a fine of 1.5% for every month that it is not paid. So you are owing small. If you don't pay the small, it will grow. So small debt. So some of you will find that, and the auditors are requiring us to apply the fines. When the auditors come with the audit queries, we have to answer that we have found these firms indebted to you for this long, and no fines have been applied. And then we have to scramble to answer, make excuses for you. But increasingly, the Auditor General, otherwise they may surcharge us. They may surcharge us, and my money is small. So I can't pay your fine for you. So we beseech you by the mercies of God, pay your fees on time to avoid these fines being imposed. And most of you will be aware that we don't take cash here. So bring banker's draft. If you bring a check, you don't get a receipt until the check has cleared. And it takes time for this bank reconciliation and everything. So we advise that you do the banker's draft. And the fees are subject to change. Okay, with only 30 days notice, the law empowers us to do that. This is the current schedule of fees. It is the current schedule of fees. I saw a story in a headline. Somebody said, I think it was a mistake, that NCA to charge 5,000 something. I think it's a mistake. Now for the authorization fees, it is, you've already paid your application fee, all of you. But then when we give you provisional, we charge you this one. What is a function of your location and your coverage area? 25, 45. And then these are the fees. So we charge you this column, and then we add the first year annual regulatory fee and the first year annual spectrum fee. So you will add all of this together, okay, for your authorization fee. But then this is the recurrent one. This is the one you pay every year. So every year you will pay this plus this. Okay, and I'm saying that plan for this. Plan for it. Every year, know that this is a bill you have to pay, and plan for it. Okay, you can calculate your own fees. Okay, and before we increase it or change it or reduce it, we will tell you.
We will tell you in advance, at least 30 days before. We also have health and safety obligations, and your electrical installations must conform to the Energy Commission's regulations. It's important. We have too many fires, and it's your investment. It costs a lot of money to set up. Protect it, and do ensure that you have earthing. Earthing is important, so that when there are surges, they can be dissipated. It's important. Even if you are on a story building, they can earth and do a pot, okay, a flower pot with sand in it, and then put the wire, the rod, the copper rod in there, just so that excess power can be properly discharged. Excess electrons can be properly. We also require that you have a fire certificate from the Ghana National Fire Service. So if you don't have a fire certificate, please get one. And we still have to see the fire extinguishers on site, because we don't know how people get their certificates sometimes. And ensure that there are no loose cables. There are no loose cables. The wiring is important. And the mast and towers, there are guidelines. The NCA itself has guidelines that you must comply with. Ghana Civil Aviation Authority also has guidelines on lighting and marking of obstacles. The color, the aviation color of orange and white. Okay, you have to comply with them. And install lightning arresters on top of the towers. And you need permits. You need permits, okay, from your district assembly and also from EPA. And now it's mandatory that you have an EPA clearance certificate, okay, permit, an EPA permit when we come for inspection. So please work at it. And also we check the right. This one we don't tell you about it, but we conduct periodic measurements to see that the radiations coming from your transmissions comply with the ICNEP or the ICNEP limits, which are recommended by the World Health Organization. When you are given your, if you are a new authorization holder, you have 2 years to commence operations. Okay? If you are not a new authorization holder, but one who is already in operation, but you've applied for renewal, and we are giving you today your renewal, provisional renewal authorization, we will conduct the inspection before we give you the final authorization. And so, if you are, remember that all the checklist I'm going to go through, make sure that you have, complied with them. Your authorization is for 5 years, okay? So after 5 years, it will be due for renewal, and don't wait for it to expire, okay? The law says that you must apply, you can apply before the 3 months, but if you apply after 3 months, you are not giving us enough time to complete the processing of the renewal before the expiration date. So if you apply, let's say 2 months to expiry, there's a chance that you may be suspended until the time that the authorization is processed, the renewal is processed. So please do well. And then we find that a number of you struggle with renewal because of these tax clearance. It is the laws of it is the law of Ghana that if you run a business, you must file your tax returns every year. And so when you apply for renewal, we need you to show us a tax clearance certificate. We need you to show us your Senate clearance certificate. It is the law of Ghana that you pay the Senate contribution of your staff. And then you have to file your annual returns. So at the point of renewal, you must show us your audited financial statements. So these are the mandatory documents to submit, and be mindful of. If you do these every year, you audit your accounts every year, you won't have a difficulty at the point of renewal. Now, if you are going to change, your studio or office location or transmission site location or your address or your shareholders, because some of you either sell some shares or want to assign the license, okay, you must apply to the NCA, and now there are fees for the transfer of authorizations. And when you come, we'll charge you a small amount. Council is what? 1%?
No, it's based on location.
On location. For the FM, it's based on location. So if you are rural, the fees are, because we know those in the urban areas are selling for more. So you pay a certain amount. Not too much. Not too look of you. Yeah. And this is the inspection checklist. At the end of this process, DG will introduce you to something, okay, which will help you when you leave here. So all these things I've already spoken about are the things that we check when we come for inspection. We check all these things, and I've mentioned all of them already. They are very, very important that you pay attention to all of them. And then we will take these measurements. We will take these measurements when we come. How do we enforce these things? So with the support and the leadership of the Director General, we have invested in these broadcasting monitoring systems. Broadcasting monitoring, and we have them across the country. So what the picture you see here is what is in Accra, okay? And this is the tool for the FM. And it's constantly monitoring. We are monitoring a deviation on a constant basis and logging all the infractions. So even when we go home to go and sleep, the system is still monitoring and logging any deviation. So anytime the system exceeds the threshold, the frequency, it will log it. And when we see that the deviation is sustained, you will get a love letter from us telling you that you have violated, and then we give you a certain period to fix it. And then we'll keep monitoring whether or not and whenever we write to you to fix something, do well to write back when you have done it. Notify us that you have done it, okay, as a confirmation. As a confirmation. And if you have any difficulties in rectifying them, write back. Because whenever we send you a notice, it's an opportunity, like counsel said, for you to be heard. Either for you to fix the issue and notify us, or for you to explain or ask for time if you so need. And we advise you to do so. So these BMSs are helping us constantly to check all the parameters. Okay, you are FM stations, we are not discussing into detail the TV part, but you see that it supports TV, and we're actually working with the NMC recording content also. And now we are also going to be recording from next year. We are going to be recording the FM content. Mr. Sapon will speak to some of these things later. We have the BMS in Tamale, in Ho, in Sunyane, in Kumasi, in Kufuridia, in Takrady. Those of you who visit our offices, because they are in enclosures, you may not get to see them, but they are there in all these offices. Hello, Mali, Dami Mali. Alokali. Okay. So all of them have them, and they send us reports on a weekly and monthly basis. So we are checking. And we also go on the field. Some of you would have seen our vans. We have other portable devices that we use, and we come all the way to take measurements. This is how we check the coverage measurements and other things in the field. And please, it is important that you respond to the notices and fix them. We have DG also mentioned investments in automation. So we are automating, so we are running, replacing our existing ASMS with real automation. So all the processes, okay, new applications are going to be processed on it. Okay, if you are canceling your authorization, we are revoking, we are suspending, we are modifying, we are transferring, or we are renewing. All of that will be done on the system. Okay, and later next year we will commence an online version, which will now require you to do everything online. The papers, we are going to continue taking the papers for a while. And then when this system, which is now internal, okay, when we put it online, you will now be required to do everything. And the system requires you to provide a technical contact and a financial contact. And the system will automatically be generating prompts. Okay, some of you, when you fill your renewal application forms, you don't provide your emails. You don't provide your emails. And it's a concern for this system. So the ones that we do not have, we are going to ask you to send them. So some of our team will come around at some point so that we can be generating these alerts for you. For example, it will tell you if you have a bill to pay with like 60 days. From next year, anybody who gets a provisional authorization, 30 days in, it will tell you that you have 30 days more. 45 days in, it will remind you have 15 days and this is your last reminder. And then when the days elapse, it will automatically archive it, like it's not there again. And then if you want it, you have to start a new application. And so now you have to keep to the timelines. Okay, keep to the timelines because the things are automated. Some of the things that somebody could manually help you with, in the past. We can't do that any longer with the automation. It's very, very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Reverend Engineer Edmund Fianco, for that very elaborate presentation. As I said in the beginning, kindly note your questions down. At the appropriate time, you'll be asked to come up, and then we'll take some questions for clarity purposes. So after the session with Ms. Sapon, we'll take some questions, and then we'll address them accordingly. Now, he's a lawyer, journalist, former lecturer at the University of Ghana, and a consultant on elections and good governance with the UNDP and USAID. And through that, he's being part of observer missions in Ghana, Sierra Leone, Cameroon, and Liberia. He's currently a member of the One Community, a group of experts curating policy for the Biden-Harris administration in the United States. He's also the co-drafter of Ghana's Local Government Act and the Peace Council Act, and a fellow of the International Forum for Democratic Studies in Washington, D.C. He's also the former member of the NCA Board of Directors as well. And currently as well, his mainstay, or his 85, is the Executive Secretary of the National Media Commission, Mr. George Sapon. He'll be taking us through some introduction to content releasing for podcasting.
Thank you very much, Kwame. There are things that one can't hide. One of them is my excitement to see all of you, friends. I have seen familiar strangers. Yes, I was saying that I've seen some familiar strangers and strange familiars. But whichever way, it still defines our relationship, and I'm happy that we are all together. The second part is a recollection of a story from Isa Haruna. Wow. Okay. So, I recall as a young student at Legon, when Professor Kofi Anyido, who gave his inaugural lecture, Professor Dimenson was chairing. After he listened to him, he said, Legon will never be short of scholarship. And when I listened to Reverend Engineer Fianco and Apaya, I can only say NCA will never be short of scholarship and activities. And whenever I speak about NCA, I speak with really deep admiration and emotions as well, because I said this yesterday and I'll repeat it. I know this house, as he said, I have been a board member here. I'm proud of what we did. But it is very exciting to come back to the institution to see that if you left it at 2 and you knew that somebody will really progress this, and so you expect that you come into the building and certainly you want to see 6, you want to see, say, 4. And then you enter the building and you are seeing 9 and 9.5 up to 10. You can only say, yes. You guys have really, really, really impressed me, and I'm always happy to say this. I've said this publicly elsewhere, and I'll repeat it. One of the things that I have heard Apaya and Engineer Fianco speak about is something that, because you are broadcasters, I really want us to keep it in mind. As far as I'm concerned, NCA is almost mathematical. In other words, if you see an NCA decision, like mathematics, if you understand the formula, you can trace from problem to the solution. And I just want to share 2 quick with you. One is what Council just spoke about, the reclassification, that they won a case at the Court of Appeal. The reclassification is only the tool. The policy objective was to democratize access to the means of public communications. I was in the building when that discussion started. To see that when we were completely out, somebody still looked at it, brought clarity to it and said, we've got to do this. only shows how the nation is growing. But the other one is the declaration of MTN as a significant market power. Again, I was in the building when the discussions started. The two things that DJ, you and your new team brought to the matter was clarity of thought and the courage of implementation. Because we knew, but how do you tackle a huge company like MTN? Also when the idea is new. But to see that you guys brought clearer ideas to it and to say, this is what the nation needs. We've got to do this on behalf of the nation. I want to congratulate you once again. And the reason why I spend time to say this is to let all of us here see that if you see any decision of the authority and you sought to understand, in most cases, the formula would be there. In the post-truth Ghana, we need a few people who really dedicate themselves to that kind of truth, to say, let's move forward. And I want to thank all of you for giving me this chance to make these preliminary comments. The next thing I want to say is what I always tell my professor, Engineer Fion, who is my professor in understanding these technical things. And I keep telling him that between the work we do at NMC and the work NCA does, the technical issues and the content issues, because me, I'm not smart, I reduce them to very simple issues. And I say, my understanding is that everything, it is like carrying cassava from my village to Accra. Okay? We are talking about the vehicle and the road. So everything Engineer Fiango explained to us regarding the spectrum and I see it as the road. And the rules that guide where I can drive and where I can't drive. Everything he was talking about, the infrastructure, your transmitter, everything is about my vehicle. How I can keep the road, the vehicle roadworthy. What we are talking about now is the quality of the cassava. Okay? Or the cargo in the car. Whether or not you can carry cassava or you can carry marijuana is what we are talking about now. I hope that helps. Yes. So I just want us to quickly look at. Yes, I can see now. And I always want to start by drawing attention that when we talk about content regulations, we say we regulate by community standards. What it simply means is that broadcasting is to serve the people. So the standards that the people set for themselves in terms of culture, in terms of decency, is what broadcasting must live by. When the people of Ghana were given the chance about what rules should guide this nation in terms of reviewing the Constitution, this is what they said about the media. It's a lot of text, but I want us to just spend a few minutes. So in short, the Constitutional Review Committee gives us an idea of what Ghanaians think about the media. The same commission, this is when they have listened to everybody, this is the commission's own finding. In other words, their conclusion based on what they heard. And you can find this at paragraph 424 of the CRC report. Next, let us look at this. This is the Afrobarometer study. Okay. If you look at Afrobarometer from 2005, check this. This is the percentage of people in the country who feel like government should have the right to prevent certain kinds of publications. Okay? By 2017, this is how far it has risen. So this is the people's judgment over our work. As regulators, we will keep repeating. We regulate by community standards. We only exist to help your work and to protect the society or protect consumers. So there are a number of things that we want to draw your attention as you go forward into your work. There are a number of instruments that we use to regulate content in Ghana. Number one is guidelines. For those of you who are theoretical, these are the same things that we call the Code of Ethics. In other words, the Code of Ethics are principles. They've been reduced into simple guidelines that everybody can follow. And then the next is the law. When it comes to the guidelines or the ethical codes, we have the guidelines for political journalism, local language broadcasting, guidelines for the publication of rejoinder, the broadcasting standards, and the guidelines for political advertising. Them contains important guides about what is safe and what is not safe, and would really want to encourage you. I always say that if you can't read any of them, please take a look at this one, the guidelines for local language broadcasting, because it distills a lot of the key principles in all these. When it comes to the law, we have the Constitution, 1992. The lawyers tend to like to say, instead of the 1992 Constitution, to do this. Anybody knows why? Oh, you know. First, to show that they are lawyers. But second, also because in our rendition, there are many constitutions within the country. Okay, even though this is the operational constitution, lawyers in legal analysis sometimes want to trace ideas, and so that's why they do this. And then we have the Criminal Offences Act, formerly called the Criminal Code. Then there is the National Media Commission Act, and then the National Media Commission Content Standards and Regulations. All these are important laws that you want to familiarize yourselves with. There are a few of them that I will just try to highlight. One is the Article 164 of the Constitution. 162 and 163 are the provisions that grant the substantive right to freedom of the media and of expression. Almost every journalist is familiar with these two provisions. Somehow, and the lawyer is laughing at it. All of us get tired when we get to 164, so we don't read. But that is where you have the most substantive limitations on the right to free expression. So when you carry the banner of the right to free expression, it is true, and we support that. But keep in mind that there is Article 164. And what does it say? It subjects media freedom to laws that are reasonably required in the interest of national security, public order, public morality, and for the purpose of protecting the reputations, rights, and freedoms of other persons. Okay. What it means is that there are laws on these issues, and you need to take your time and work with your lawyers to understand them, because each one of them can land you into trouble. The next that I want to draw attention to is 1626, which says that any medium for the dissemination of information has an obligation to carry a rejoinder. In other words, if you carry material on somebody and the person feels aggrieved, you are under constitutional obligation to carry a rejoinder from that person. Note that the law does not set any mode for the submission of the rejoinder. So if the person comes and says, please give me airtime, I want to sit at the studio to explain my matter, you cannot insist that they should go and write. I hope that is clear. The other thing that I want to draw attention to is that this is the only provision in the Constitution where the Constitution almost gets overbroad. So it says, any medium for the dissemination of information. So this is not only applicable to the media. Even if somebody is carrying a loudspeaker on a car, going around shouting about somebody, if the person complains, that obligation may kick in. And for those of you who work in smaller communities where people have public address systems in the markets and all, this provision may well apply. So if somebody is your friend, it would be good to draw their attention to this. The next most curious that you want to keep your eyes on, this is from the Criminal Offences Act, Section 208. The publication of false news. This one, all that we want to tell you is that this law is implemented neither by NCA nor by NMC. This is the Criminal Offences Act. Who is in charge of that act? Okay. So Dampare is in charge of this one. It's not a regulatory issue, okay? But we want to draw your attention to it because if it catches you, it may not involve us, but because you're our friend, we would be sad. Except that we will express our sadness, but we'll go home and drink our soup. And you will be somewhere else. So we have to tell you the truth. Now, the other thing that I want to draw attention to is the LI 2224. This is the LI that Giba sued over. The Supreme Court disagreed with certain parts of the law, but left all the standards issues untouched. What it means is that all those provisions are still good law. And we want you to be familiar with it. This particular law enjoins journalists and the media to carry accurate and impartial presentation of news. For those of you broadcasting in local languages, this is your biggest danger. This is the biggest danger. We are seeing most of you carry a beautiful art form of culture into broadcasting. Spontaneous performance and delivery. Relying on exaggerations and that is not for broadcasting. Any attempt to over-elaborate on any piece of information carries you further and further away from accuracy. So we want you to take note of that. And then there's a requirement for high moral standards in news content, which is easy to see. And then the law also requires fair and balanced political coverage. The academic part of me always forces me to draw attention to these two elements. Most journalists tend to think of them as either the same or just a restatement of a principle. It is not. Fairness is a source issue, balance is an output issue. So fairness relates to how you treat your source. And I always like to draw attention to the fact that fairness does not mean equality of treatment. And it is the trickiest part of it. You do not achieve fairness by treating all sides to an issue to the same method. And I was using the example yesterday. If you are talking to two parties in an issue, and you call someone on the phone, let's say on an office line, and that you spoke to the person, you may think that if you call the other person on a landline in the office, it's fair. If it turns out that you know, or you are caused reasonably to believe that one of them is senior enough to have the privacy of an office and a dedicated office line where the person can talk to you freely, but the other person does not have access to the same facility, then you are not treating that person fairly. So you need to take decisions that satisfy your own conscience, that indeed I have been fair. Balance is an output issue. When I have spoken to everybody, how I present that in the news. And I always say the example of how we write in Ghana. Kwame Jan said George is ugly. That one is true. He eats too much. And he shouts without cause. When we contacted George, he denied all the claims. You understand? And then you think that you have finished yours. The principles of balance require that each matter that you took time to isolate, that judge is ugly, you must provide judge's response to that. That on that charge, judge agrees. You understand? He eats too much. Please tell them what judge said. That if it is Gary, yes. But if it is about the beans, he doesn't eat that much. Okay, so that is how you achieve balance. But let me share with you just very quickly a story from Kofodia. This is a doctor who was at the Kofodia Government Hospital. There was a matter that one newspaper had carried on him. The journalist had gone to seek his, before publication, the journalist had gone to his hospital 9 times seeking explanation on his side of the story. After the 9th visit, he decided that I'll run the story. He did. Hasn't he done his part? Most people say, when we drill to the fact, it was discovered that he was the only gynecologist at the time in the whole Kofodia area. So he would go to the theater every day from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. The journalist knew this and always went between 10 and 2 p.m. You understand? In order to take off that I sought this is what the law says. In such a situation, the fact that you've gone there 100 times wouldn't save you. Because you don't achieve fairness, you don't achieve balance. Then the last thing, production of minors, it's okay, we all understand. The other tricky one that I want to draw attention to is the privacy issue. It's very tricky because throughout jurisdictions, this is what nails journalists. How do we determine privacy, whether there's a privacy issue or not? We make a distinction or some classifications here. Who is involved and where is this happening? Is this a public person? Is it a private person? Is the matter happening in a public place or is it in a private place? Usually, if the person is a public person and the incident is happening in a public place, we say it's the green area. You can carry that. If it is a private person in a private place, it's a red flag. And we always want to draw attention that the privacy of a place or public nature of a place is not about ownership, but function. So, if the president lives in public accommodation, that will be owned by the public. But because it is for his private use, that place will be private. You understand? So, a hotel lobby may be a public place, but a hotel room would be a private place. The trickiest is an office. Okay? NCA is an official place, it's a public place. However, when the DG closes, keeps his door open, what anybody passing by can reasonably see would be public. When he closes his door, it ceases to be public. And you therefore require access and permission. Okay? Worse is when you have been admitted into the DG's office. The space he offers you is your official space. What is on his desk is not public to you. So if you strain your neck or use any, zoom camera to take anything on his desk or in the office, you may not find the defense of public place available to you. You understand? So you want to be very, very careful when you are dealing with privacy rules. The next is about violence and antisocial behavior. These don't require any complicated explanation. And then incitement. On incitement, the one that I really want to draw attention to because of the times is that the law says that you should not incite hatred or violence or tarnish the reputation of a person due to. And it lists these items. The last one is the one that I want you to take note for purposes of today's debate. Our nation is involved in a vital national seminar over sexual orientations. As media, we owe it to the society to provide a platform to all the contending parties to make their case. But the danger we hold is that we cannot use language or take any position that incites hatred against the sexual preferences of anybody, and therefore the position that anybody holds on this. And it is something that I really want to encourage all of us to be very careful about. Then finally we come to advertisements. Again, this is one of the areas that we can get into big trouble. Please take note of this. Adverts should contain no obscene, racial, prejudicial, or harmful messages. That's fairly easy. The most dangerous is this: misleading and untruthful advertising. For those of us who are advertising herbal medicine and giving space to all manner of preachers, please keep in mind that the claims that they make, if they tend to be misleading, and the only way you can tell whether the thing is misleading or not is to be able to verify yourselves. So if somebody comes to sit on your radio and is making claims about the powers that he has and can, please, if you think that you can ascertain it, go ahead. If you know that you cannot do it, be very careful. So on this note, I want to thank you very much for this opportunity.
There's another very slippery and grey area, which is issues that are in the public's interest. And I am wondering, so the DG's example, for instance, if I get to the office and I'm stretching my neck, what it means then is that I am entering into a private space within the office. But what happens if what I'm stretching my neck for is actually something that's in the interest of the public? So I'm sure there's been a controversial commentary around that, if that can be cleared. And my very last one is whether we can get access to all of the slides that have been used for the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Noel. Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Mahama Haruna, Gift Multimedia Operators of Include FM, Boli, Savannah region. First of all, let me thank my former lecturer. I think when you were introducing him, you should have added he was a lecturer at
Actually, I mentioned that.
the Ghana Institute. Okay, thank you.
Of where? GIG as well?
Yes.
Oh, so it's legal
Yeah,
in GIG?
I was one of his students.
Okay, right, very well.
Benefited a lot from him.
Okay.
The last thing he mentioned was misleading adverts.
Okay.
Yes, we do have this herbal medicine people and what have you. Sometimes some of the things they come to say, you yourself know that they are lies. But you are torn between the lies and monetary gain. Because if they don't come, how do you get the money to pay your people? So it's a very serious thing. In that case, what do you do? And then one of the presenters made mention of operator's logbook. I think we need to get much information on it.
Okay.
Most of us are not keeping it because we don't know what it is about. And then lastly, community radio station versus commercial radio station. To be frank, some of the community radio stations are more commercial than we, the commercial radio. They are competing with us, and they are even charging more. Are they supposed to do it Because radio business is competition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. The last person, and then we'll take the answers from Mr. Sapon and then Edmund.
Yes, my name is Marty. Anambik Company Limited. We operate New Day FM. I want to know, so for example, if I have issues with my transmitter and I buy a new one, am I required to have the NCA come over to inspect before we do the installation?
As a matter of fact, even before you bought the new one, you should have actually been in touch with the NCA.
Very much. Does it come at a cost to my company?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. 2. If, for example, I'm operating within, say, 25 kilometers, but then there are no other stations within that catchment area, and due to the fact that probably where I operate, so I'm using my station for example, in fact we are in a very low land area where the waves are very difficult to send across, to the extent that even when you are broadcasting at a 2K, there are some communities around that still don't get your coverage. Am I permitted to increase my 2K to say 3 or 4K if I'm able to do so? Thank you very much.
Okay. I don't try to answer that one, even though I think I have a fair idea. So maybe we'll take this up first. Noel's issue is the issue of public versus private. Just in case what he's seen on these desk is of public interest, should he go ahead and capture it? And then the other one, of course, the slides for the presentation, we'll share them on our website. In fact, we'll share some of that documents on our website where you can all have access to. So Mr. Sapon, please, that one. And then the issue from Haruna is about the herbal arts. Yes, we know that they are misleading, but they offer them the best cash. What do they do?
Thank you, Kwame. I think Haruna's case doesn't require an answer. He's posed the dilemma that you need to answer because we've given you the tools to answer that. Now, where's my brother who spoke about public interest? Please, what's your name? Noel. Okay. Noel, I want to encourage you to just take a casual look at a legal case that we call Richardson and Mellis, where the judge says something about public policy, and I want you to apply that to public interest. Rama, counsel, repeat to them what the law says. That public policy is an unruly horse. Once you get astride it, you can never tell where it leads you. Okay? And it's the same thing with public interest. It's a very dangerous defense to hold in the media. Everything that we do is about public interest. But please take note that none of us knows exactly what that concept is. Except that we know one thing, what it is not. Public interest is not what the public is interested in. Please, did you hear me? Of all the things that public interest can be, the one thing that it is not is what the public is interested in. So in most cases, when journalists are talking about public interest, they are talking about the gossip value of something. Okay? So there's something we call creeping legitimacy. We go and throw some controversy, and then we excite the public's ear, and the public demand to know, and then we cite the public demand to know to be public interest, based on which we need to cover the story. You understand? Journalism doesn't allow that. But even if journalism allows that, the law has no time for that kind of thing. You understand? So please take note. The only circumstances under which you can cite public interest as a defense is where the issues are so clear. God forbid. I have seen that somebody is producing drinks in this corner here. I saw with my eyes that he is drawing water from a gutter. If I allow this batch of the production to go into the public space, by the time I go through all the motions, human life will be at stake. On the basis of that nebulous concept called public interest, I'll run the story. You understand? Except in such clear circumstances, you want to be very, very, very careful in using public interest justifications to breach privacy. I hope that is clear. Thank you.
So, operators logbook. So we require that you keep a log of who comes in, what, and who goes out. Okay. So most of it is like when you were entering this building, okay, you were supposed to complete a logbook. So that is one. You're also supposed to keep a log of your programming. Okay. Some of you do this electronically, okay, because you have software that you use to scan that you can generate, you know, a report from. We respect that. But then whoever comes in and goes out must log. And so if you don't do that, you should start keeping, especially those who are not, if somebody came to run on, we are not talking about, so that's why it's not the same as your security logbook. Okay, whoever goes into your studio and out, those are the ones you are supposed to log. So commercial versus community. Do complain to us when you observe. There are cases that we have investigated, and there's a community radio revenue generation guidelines, because in the past, well, they shouldn't do anything at all, but then they also have expenses to cover. Okay, they even have volunteers that they don't pay, but at least with TNT there, you get me. They also pay electricity. Okay, so they have come together, the network, and generated a revenue generation code. So we normally check what they are doing against them. But this case, you cite that he's even charging more than, most likely he was there before all of you came. So it's like they are the people that the people know. But once you find this out, please bring it up to our attention. We will investigate and then take the appropriate action. Then somebody asked about transmitter power.
Yes, low line area can be extended.
Yeah. So, and you said you could guess the answer. That whatever you want to do, what we are saying is that write to us. Let us assess. So we have tools to simulate. So when we do the simulation, we can tell that the potential for interference will grow. If you are having problems with count, don't do it arbitrarily. After we have done inspection, you have the time to engineer your station before the inspection. Okay, before NCA will come, you are on your own. You can engineer, and so do your tests. Like in Telecom, they will do drive tests. In your own case, you know, some of you, the shortcut you take is that you wait, you go on air, and say, tell us where you can hear us from. So somebody will call and say, oh, I'm listening to you from, then that's how you know that, you know, but it's not the right way. So the technician, after they have done the work, they have to, which areas are you supposed to cover? And normally when we even do these things, the ones that we are assessing these things, we actually don't use our very high-end equipment. We don't use our expensive equipment, because those ones are very sensitive. So they can even register signals that, so we have some, you know, 20 CD radio sets. Okay, those are the ones we carry. Because we want to know whether the average, the low end risk, the ones are now, people are from the farm and they put by their ear. And that's the one we take. So you should do something like that. Just go to the communities and then just check that, are you getting the signal? Okay, before you even invite us for inspection. So that you don't have to make the changes after we have left. But if you have to, notify us, wait for approval before you do the variation.
Thank you. And again, bear in mind that we have zonal managers across the country. If you have any of these issues, feel free to contact them. And the engineers in every region as well, looking for the NCA. So, you know, much as you can write to us, you can also just swing by the regional offices across the regions, and I'm sure they'll be happy to assist you. Yes? Yes, you still have to write nonetheless, yes, please. That's very important for us.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Rahman from Tamale.
I represent Ghana English Community Radio. Actually, the presentation I've gotten to a place where I need clarification. With regards to radio or any institution inviting NCU for an inspection, that side, I've seen that you said when you invite NCU to come and inspect you, it attracts fees.
What we said was that the first one is free.
Okay.
If after we've been there and realize that there's something that you have not done, the second one we charge you. Third one will give us enough grounds to even suspend your provisional authorization.
Okay.
So it doesn't, the first one is free. I mean, that's on us.
Okay.
But if because of something that you fail to do, you have to come again and again, that one will be on you.
Okay.
And then if you realize that you're not serious enough, we'll just withhold your authorization.
Then my question is answered because I wanted to
All right, that's
so
fine.
that you cancel.
All right, thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you. My name is Munir Ibrahim, Skodic Multimedia, operators of Radio Mark and Radio Tamal. Now, we are from WA, where there is no regional office. We're still operating under Bolaga. And so, if there is a win, and I realize that one of my antennas is faulty, and I will have to write, would I have to write to the headquarters, or I will have to write to Bolaga? And how long will this take me to get a response before I'm able to fix just an antenna to come back on air? Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we'll get to that a bit. I have an answer, but I had more to check all of that later. Or DG as well when it comes up.
Thank you. My name is Michael Yanku from the West Region, Faramata Radio Hunter. My first question is on the permits for the tower. So the EPA permits. If you are operating on a tower that doesn't belong to you, and so you are not the one who installed it, do you still have to have access to the permits? That's my first question. Because the tower does not belong to you, it's for somebody else. Okay. Then my second question is, I actually didn't see annual renewal fee for community radio when the slide was shown.
Please
shown on the
go back.
board. So
Go back.
show that slide and let me.
What?
Yeah, show that slide. Where the slide that captures revenue.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Okay, all right, that's fine.
Sorry?
No, we'll get back to that.
So I didn't see any fee for that, but I know you'll be paying the annual fee as well. And then the other question is, can community radio be assigned in the same location? Yes, I understand the location aspect of it, but can it be reassigned to a new, let's say, somebody else to hold in trust of the community? And so this company was holding it in trust of the community. Can it be changed from another to another entity? Also, let me tell by guarantee for that matter. And then the other one is, some clarity on some issues. Those of us who are just renewing our frequencies, we apply so many years. We've been writing letters to NCA for follow-ups, and then you are not getting any feedback. In fact, I'm from Tapan, so I think the regional boss here can speak to that. We wrote several letters to follow up.
The letters was for us to come and inspect?
No, when our license expired,
okay,
we were asked to renew. And so we went through some processes, all these things that was spoken about, and then we finalized it. But for some time, we're not getting any feedback. Okay. So we started following up. At a point, the regional rep said that we cannot pay our annual fee because we have not even been renewed yet. Because our monies were ready to go and pay. Because you have not paid the annual renewal fee for 2019, 2020. So no, hold on, you can't pay because you have never renewed your frequency yet. So wait. My question is that, are we still going to be buried with those debts? That's the first question. And then, as we are coming to take the new one, are you going to also pay new fees? Because I was seeing something like this is a provisional one. and for provision one, it comes with other costs. I'll end it here. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's I think Ed will just take that now.
So, you already answered the question about whether you write to. So, every letter to NCA must be addressed to the Director General. Every letter to the NCA must be addressed to the Director General. However, you can submit the letter at any of our offices. So, you don't write to the regional manager, you write to Director General. But you can deliver the letter at the regional office. They will make sure that the letter reaches the Director General. Please, is that clear? Is that clear? Or you have a problem with that? I'm looking at the questioner's face. Okay. So, tower ownership and payments. Okay. The timelines. Yeah, so that is also where it's helpful if you personally deliver to the office, because then if you have an emergency, I think that you should have a discussion with the regional office. They know what to do. If it's an emergency, they know what to do. So that whilst your letter is being dispatched, they also are in constant communication with head office. So there are some things that they would call, will present the matter to DG, and then a decision would be expedited. Okay, so that you could have some guidance even before you receive a formal letter. Okay, so the advice is that if it's, it's urgent, have a conversation when you submit the letter. We can't guarantee that they will give you because they also have to consult. But then instead of waiting for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you may get a guidance in a matter of days. Okay, a day or two. Okay. Tower ownership and permit. So if it doesn't belong to you, so you have an obligation to check with your host. Okay, that the tower, for example, these tower companies, the specialized tower companies, they typically would go through these are going through the right processes. But you should ask, is your right before you contract them? That because we would like to know. We would like to. If it's an entity that we have already licensed, you have to show us the relationship with them legally, and then we can request that permit from them. But please find out. It should be part of the things that you put in your agreements with them. The community radio renewal fee, the annual regulatory fee is also 770 Ghana cedis that you pay every year. You're just repeating what you paid. And then the change of ownership of the community, that the organization that is holding the authorization doesn't want to do it any longer. So but this is something, that the law even makes provision for a public forum in processing some of these requests. Okay, so if you want, it's not something we'll typically do for you to transfer a community interest to another one. Okay, but if we investigate, there's a forum, the community itself supports the arrangement, then it's something that the NCA may consider doing. But it's not something that we'll just sit in the office and agree upon if it's a community radio station. Delay in renewal applications. So we've mentioned, and DG also mentioned, the automation that we are doing is to speed up some of these things so that the manual processes, there have been instances where maybe there's a batch of applications and then one falls through, okay, and then everybody misses it. So the way to avoid this is automation. So we apologize for the delays that you have experienced, and hopefully from next year when the automation officially kicks in, these things will be a thing of the past. The delay in getting your annual regulatory fee because of the non-renewal is a function of the learnings from the tribunal. That if your authorization has expired and is no longer valid, then we don't have also a just basis to invoice you. So what some companies do is that they pay on account because we know you are operating. So at the right time, when we have a legitimate basis, we will invoice you for the period
that has passed. What some people do is that they don't have an invoice, but they make payments on account. So that at the point of invoicing, we will net it off so that they don't owe. You get me? But on the legal thing is that the tribunal said, why were you still collecting their money when they didn't have an authorization? So that is why, and we also don't, we have applied, so we also don't want to. For example, for the beginning of the year, when we did not have a board, okay, board approval is mandatory for us to grant a renewal authorization. So if you completed the processes, say in March, we had to wait for the board approval, which only happened when the board was inaugurated. So there are some of the approval processes that may introduce some of these delays, but we are very hopeful that with the automation, but you will get the arrears as part of your provisional authorization, and hopefully you will settle them, because you know you were waiting for it before. We hope that you kept the money safely, and even got interest on the fees. We will not charge you interest on it, and that will become your returns on investment.
Yes, but for let's have someone here first. Yes.
Thank you. My name is Jerry Williams. I'm speaking on behalf of Santa Company Limited. That was
I need a clarity on a statement one of the presenters made concerning the fact that once you apply for renewal, then within some number of days, and the NCA does not, you don't hear from them, then it means they have automatically renewed your
That wasn't quite what you said, but I think I'll come back again to.
Yeah, so because I have with me a document from your outfit concerning a renewal fee that we made way back 2018. And there was a note here that can be informed that your renewal application is being reviewed and the outcome will be communicated to you in due course. This is 2018. And then we couldn't hear from the NCA again. So we were heard in between the lines. So please, let us be clear on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. But there are some questions at the back as well, so maybe just for fairness' sake. Sorry about that, we'll come back to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Abubakar Siddiq Ahmed. I'm coming from Radio Universe. My first question has to do with a cavity filter. My question is simple. Is the cavity filter the only equipment that we can use to hold the frequency in check? Or there are other alternatives? And I'm asking this because of the economy of radio stations. I mean, the cavity filter ranges between 19,000 to 117,000 Ghana cedis. And it's not going to be easy for some stations such as mine. And since it's going to be compulsory, it means that we need to think outside the box. And so that is my question. And I want to believe that technology has advanced. And so there may be other options. My second question has to do with the coverage area. I'm talking as the manager of Radio Universe, but also president and founder of the Campus Broadcasting Association of Ghana. We started in 1993, 94, thereabout, and our coverage as campus radio stations was then 19 kilometers. And several years on, just as SCA has grown to what it is today, we are asked to go down to 5 kilometers. We are not very happy about that. And so maybe we may have to look at the law and then provide maybe some important dispensation. This is important because with COVID, for instance, nobody knew there would be a pandemic. On our various campuses, we had to use our radio stations to provide certain services to students and who are scattered across the city. And if we are going to be operating within the campus, we are not interested in just talking to ourselves. We want to talk to the public and our students everywhere. So there too, we would want you to look at it for us. Then finally, in terms of community broadcasting, we looked at location, but I didn't see a community based on interest. If there is a group who are coming up with a community station based on interest and not location, are they also going to be, subjected to the same rules and regulations? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Alaji, for that. We'll pick one more question and then I'll call Edmond and Empire.
Thank you very much. My name is Mohammed. My question is on the fee bit. Just like engineer...
On the what fees?
The fees, yes.
Okay.
Just like engineer Humor at the end of his answer, assuming as COVID is being badged for everything, we didn't, reserve any surplus. All right? And then what we're expecting relatively will not be something one can pay off immediately. As the authority has a provision where, say, we can write or we can make part payment of it and then complete the other on a later time, or it's just that you should pay all off within the 60 days. Thank you.
You don't have to give me credit, okay. All right. So we just, Edmond, we just take those questions and then Apaya first, and then we'll come to you.
So the question on the 60-day period I made mention, that if you submitted your application within the allowed period, that is 3 months prior to expiration, that's the regulation, National Communications Regulation 2011, LI 1991, says that if you submit within that timeline, within the 60 days, that's the period within which we are supposed to process your application. So it is after that period that it says that if you do not hear, that's supposing you have complied and submitted all the documentation required, then it is deemed to be renewed. But if we have written to you, or if there are other outstanding matters to be resolved, that means even your new application is not complete. And that's what we've observed over the years, that sometimes you submit some of the requirements, and there's maybe a missing requirement, a tax clearance certificate, snake clearance. But if you have submitted it outside the period, you see some of you submitted your application outside the period, maybe you have had to be treated as fresh application. So you cannot go and use those 60-day timelines. So you have to notice when you submitted the application. Is it 3 months prior to expiration or after the expiration? So there are differences. The law gives us 60 days within which to process your application. And if within that we are unable, we will write to you and tell you that this is where we have gotten to. But we have not shut you down. That's why you continue to operate. Or were you shut down? Were you? So the team was already in operation because you were operating.
Thank you. So quickly, Alaji, you say you have some innovation to the cavity filter. Please propose to the NCA. But until then, we will evaluate it. But until then, this is what is in force. Okay, we are very open-minded here. If you think you have something better than what we have specified, do share with us. But until we have gone through an evaluation and accepted it, the requirements would be, so in your own case, it means that you may want to wait to complete that process before you get your final authorization. I don't know if that's what you would want to do. If you have the time to go through an evaluation of your alternative proposal. But we are open-minded and open to receiving those proposals. The coverage area. So Alaji, if you have a justification that, the university community for which you authorize, and let's take it that, yes, in 1993, 94, 95, thereabout, the rules were not the same. Even the reason why multimedia took us to court was because at that time there was even no coverage restriction. Then it came to 150, then it came to 100. So by the time you started, there was no restriction on you at all.
The coverage was as far as you could go. There was no restriction, Alaji. Yeah, but I'm saying that I've seen your file, okay, from Frequency Board, because they transferred those files to us. And you remember Major Tando, Mr. Pujo, Mr. Brock were moved from there to us. And I'm saying that when we joined the NCA, there was no coverage limitation. It was up until 2007 that we first had a policy to now establish coverage limitations. Before that, there was nothing like that. And today, we say that if you think that your campus and this catchment area, okay, like I said, I like to remember, we are not blocking the signal, okay? So this is something that on the community stations, not all the stations are 5 kilometers. Some of them are more, okay? And they are more because they have made a special case, we have assessed, we have analyzed, and we have agreed that the community is bigger than the default coverage. And we have done an extension for them. So if you think that your campus and this catchment area is such that come and make a unique case, it's a case by case. The default is 5 kilometers. Community based on interest. So if you define the community and we can see it, okay, and like an FM is location based. So if you define a community, for example, that covers the whole country. We can't give you an authorization to cover the whole country. I don't know if you get me. So that will also be considered. In terms of payment plan, my director of finance tells me the difficulties with that. It is something that we consider on a case by case. But however, for provisional, it's a very, very difficult thing. Because what it means is that we are extending your illegal state because you don't have an authorization. So as for provisional, I beseech you by the mercies of God, do settle it within the time frame, especially now. Do your maximum best. If you have to borrow, this is a good thing to borrow for, because it is the lifeline of your operation. So do your very best. Some people have had to sell property to pay for because they believe so much in the station that they are operating. Please do your best for the provisional. And use the payment plan sparingly. Where there is because there are some people they pay so regularly that when today they bring a case up that this and this has happened and I'm asking for time, you know that, but some people, it's like from Genesis to okay. So sometimes it may be declined for that reason.
We should wrap up with the questions now. So thanks so much. I believe the good thing is that the lawyers, engineers are all around us. How do I relax? It's okay, Harry. In a minute, okay.
Yeah, from what we have learned, I think we'll all try and follow the rules and regulations. But I have a problem with our situation in Northern Region. With our NCA is too strict on us. Very, 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 very strict.
This filter committee you made mention of, Ahmed will come to Bali almost every week. Until we bought some. So sometimes I ask, is Northern Region different from other parts of the country? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ahmed is working very hard. All right. So we are at the tail end of the program now. The good thing is that the lawyers, engineers are still around us. So after this session, feel free to kindly meet up in any of them and ask them the question that you want. But for now, may I kindly call upon the DG, Mr. Nochi, to kindly come and then wrap us up.
So all too soon we've come to the end of the program, almost at the end of the program, and listen to the questions. It seemed like everyone was listening in very spirited discussions, questions. On behalf of the management, the board of NCA, I want to thank you all for making it. Hopefully we're going to make this a regular discussions. We will try as much as possible to come to your region so you don't necessarily have to come to Accra here. A few housekeeping stuff that we want to do. So to make life easier for you, we've compiled, we call these policy regulatory documents. So we want to distribute it to you, and then we go through it. There are only about 10 of them, and then after that, you'll be called to go and pick up your authorizations. It's ready. It wasn't a joke. It's actually ready. So this is what we do. So when you were coming in, I believe you were assigned some numbers. So I just called the number, you raise up your hand, and then you pick up your regulatory document, and then we go over. So number one, please. Number one. Who is number one? Number one. Number two. Number two. Number three. Number three. Number four. Number four here. Number five. Five. Six. Number six, please. Number six. Number seven. Number eight. Number nine. Number 10. Again, we going this route because we follow the same sequence for you to pick up your authorization. Okay? So this is more like a practice. Number 10, please. Number 10. Number 11. 11. 12. Number 12. Number 12. Number 13. Number 13. Number 14. Number 15. Number 16. 17 and 18. 17 and 18. 19. Number 19. Number 19. Number 20. 21. 22. 23. 24. 25. 26. 27. 28. 29. Number 30, please. Number 30. 31. 32. 32. 33. 34. 35. 36. 37. 38. 39. Again, we will follow the same sequence for you to pick up your provisional authorizations. It's all ready to pick up. 39, what's it? 39? 39, 40, 41, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 50, 51, 52, 53, 53 right here, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 69, 70, 71, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81. Now, can you give the rest to the regional managers? Please give them one each. Give them one each. Is there anyone here who wrote down their name, got a number, but has not received any? Okay, so again, this is just a summary of the regulations and the legal framework that was discussed with you by Lawyer Paya and Engineer Reverend Piankon. So we want to go over quickly, okay? It's only 10 of them. Go over very briefly. Number one, please, let's go to number one. Number one. Number one. Pay authorization fees within 60 days from the date of issue of the provisional authorization. Right, this is not ambiguous. So, right after this session, in the next 5-10 minutes, you will pick up your provisional authorization. In the provisional authorization, there will be an invoice that tells you the type of authorization you are receiving, the location, and how much you have to pay in 60 days. The law is very clear. Within 60 days, it has to be paid. Please, 60 days. Don't call your member of parliament. Don't call any other person to come and speak for you. 60 days. Let's make it easy for ourselves, and so that we can move on. Page number 2. So everyone, right after this session, your name, the numbers will be called. I believe five at a time. Right, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you go, you sign, you pick up, you're gone. I believe there's also lunch, right? Very good lunch. Number 2. So, number 1 says, pick up your provisional authorization and pay. Once you pay, number 2, you receive a final authorization with associated frequency and, it says and. Carefully read the conditions of the final authorization. So once you make payments, those of you who have been through this process, you will receive a final authorization that tells you your frequency and conditions of service. Right? Your conditions of your final authorization. Conditions. Is it a 5 kilometer? Is it a community? Is it a 25? Is it a 45? Where is it supposed to be? Where is the location? Pay attention to the conditions of what? Your final authorization. So, you will not leave here today with your frequency, because today you will pick up what? Your provisional authorization. Provisional authorization doesn't come with frequency. You have to come in and make payment as per the provisional authorization. And then you'll be assigned a frequency. We'll try as much as possible to ensure that everyone, those of you who are reapplying, you receive the same frequency as you had before. That's the plan. Okay. Number 3, set up your FM station within 2 years from the date of issue of final authorization. Failure to do so will result in penalties ranging from fine to revocation. This is very clear. So once you pick your final authorization, you have what? 2 years to set up. That means that you can pick up your provisional authorization today. You can make payment today and hopefully give them engineering a few days. Right? Hopefully by Monday, Tuesday, you have what? Your final authorization. And that means that, once you have your final authorization, let's just say on Wednesday, on Thursday, you can write to NCA. You see, it's very sequential. And you be sure that NCA will appropriately will come in and do the inspection for you. Number 4. This is the key. Apply for studio to transmitter like the STL if your transmission system will be at a different location. Right? This is not like the dream, you just woke up and then you have FM station. You know where your studio is going to be, you know where the transmission site is going to be. So if you know that your transmitter is not going to be local, right? It's not going to be where the studio is and it's going to be hosted somewhere at a distance, please, right, apply for the STL. Do not just pick any frequency, right? Do not just pick any. Please apply and we'll be sure to assign you an STL. That's number 4. Do not, please, apply. Even the big frequency itself has been given to you, right? So there won't be any issue in getting you an STL. Number 5, please. Number 5, invite NCA for inspection after completing the setup of your FM station. Refer to the inspection checklist on the next page. Invite. Okay, don't assume that NCA should know. Because you have a friend, I know you all have friends, right? It's a very small community. Same people you went to school with, right? They work here. That's how the system works. But do what? Invite. They didn't say call the manager. They say do what? Invite. You write to NCA for inspection. And wait. Right? Wait for the inspection to be done until you get your test transmission. So if you look at the next page, there are a series of checklists. All right? This is more or less as a guidance to you. So before you invite NCA, you make sure that you go through all this. There was a question as to how much do you pay. You don't pay anything when you invite it. But if you don't read the checklist and you invite and they come in and you fail, then it means you have to, I believe it's for 2,000 cedis or something, right? 2,000 cedis for a subsequent inspection. Very important. Because of the adjacent channel reconfiguration that we have done, right, it's important that we do have a three-stage cavity filter installed. It's one of the key, usually when the reports come to me, that's one of the key ones that I check. And sometimes, I think I mentioned yesterday, some of the sonar managers, the engineers, they will say, oh, there's no three-way cavity filter, but we recommend. No. Right? In fact, when we have the ASMS, the new automation, there won't be the room. Right? The system itself will be move on if the checklist said you don't have it. So please, be sure to go through the checklist and make sure that everything is in place. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, it's 16, 18 of them. 18 of them. Number 6, wait to receive the test transmission authorization which shall be issued upon successful inspection. Now, some of you, I don't know if you've traveled lately, right? If you are traveling lately outside the country, you have to do what? Do a COVID test. I don't know if you know about it. You have to wait until what? Exactly. Don't go to the airport and say, I'm empty this, DC that, minister this. No. And don't you know that I did a COVID test in the morning? No. Right? Wait. You have to wait to receive what? Your test transmission. It is important. You have done so well and have gotten to this point. Wait until you get your test transmission. If it seems like the NCA is delaying, please reach out to us. Right. Number seven, settle annual regulatory fees on or before the anniversary date of the final authorization. This should be doing. Number 8, seek approval from the NCA before making any changes to stations ownership. Now, this is some of the challenges that we are having. Right? A whole lot of movement within the space. Please, just write to us. I haven't seen any requests come to us that this ownership has to be changed, and then we say no. I haven't seen it done. So why don't you just do it so that it is what? Official. That is what the law. This is not subjective decision. This is the law mandates that you write to us. Number 9, please. Number 9. Apply for renewal of authorization 3 months prior to its expiry. The authorization is for a period of 5 years and is subject to renewal upon expiry. Very important. You have invested so much in this. You are playing a key role in the community. Right? Do not just take this frequency and go sleep. Just because you know some big people. And that's what we do, right? Because we know some big people. Some big people won't stay there forever. Right? These big people, they will not what? They will not stay there forever. So if you rely on big people and you don't renew, one day you'll be caught pants down. And that'll be a challenge. And then you have to start all over again. And now we accuse all minor accusations to people. Say 3 months. Right? Just make sure you put your renewal application in, and it will be processed for you. We all want to clean up the system and make it good for us. Number 10. Avoid sanctions by complying with all directives from the NCA and the conditions of your authorization. Sanctions include fines. So what we have tried to do here is to make the process seamless. We understand it's not an easy business. We understand that, but our doors are open, and that's how we have all our regional managers decide to come from the region. It's not only the regional manager. We have the regional engineers. Can you stand up so we can see the regional engineers? These are the boots on the ground. The boots on the ground, right? Boots on the ground. These are the people who come to the regions and do the inspection. You know them. Some have come all the way from Bolga, Tamale, and so on and so forth. Others are open. We want to work with you. We want, if it seems like things haven't worked the way it should be in the past, hopefully going forward we can fix that. As we told you, we've automated a lot of our processes, right? It's always said technology drive innovations. Technology drive innovations. And innovations promote market share, right? Whoever becomes innovated with technology has a bigger market share. And that's what we are trying to do, to reduce the subjectivity, right? That the engineer or the manager won't come in and because they know you, they bend it, and then tomorrow the engineer or manager is not there and it becomes a challenge. We are trying to remove that. So please work with us, and we are willing to work with you. As I sign off, I want to thank the organizers of this program. I mean, the divisions that actually have done this. It's not easy putting this together. If you think about the board, when the board made a decision, and how long it's taking to get this all provisional authorizations done, last night, some of us, I think we were leaving here, was almost about 11 p.m. or so. Right? The whole week has been like that, trying to get things done right. So I want to thank the organizers of this program, specifically Consumer and Corporate Affairs, Nana Diffie, I believe she's out there, but her deputy directors are here. Kwame Jan, can you please come? And then John, these are the two deputy directors for Consumer and Corporate Affairs. Together with your team, please communicate to them. We appreciate the work that you have put in. And then engineering. Engineer Reverend Fiancon and Bernard, your teams, the director, the charge of broadcasting, the head. Can you? All right. Then the rest of the team, the zonal managers for coming down. I appreciate this from the bottom of my heart for you making a trip to come in. It's sometimes when you are, in Tamale, you are in Bolga, you are in Takrade, Kofodia is close to here, so for them, yeah, okay. But sometimes, it seems like it's far away. It seems like you are by yourself, but we appreciate the work that you do. It's a difficult terrain. Broadcasting is a difficult terrain. If you sit where I sit, it's a very, very difficult one. And I can say that. So please, I want to thank you all. And then the management staff, right? The management staff, Dr. Pukwa Dusay, Dr. Lawyer Pukwa Dusay, Lawyer Rama, right? Dr. Majid. We have a lot of doctors here. Dr. Majid, he's in charge of IT. Who else is missing here? Oh, yes. Mr. Kojo Safama, who is in charge of our cybersecurity, is the Chief Information Security Officer. That's one of the things that we do. NCA is provide cybersecurity. We're in charge of the sector itself. So if you go to the 4th floor, if you have time, any one of you have time, you want to go to the 4th floor, we have the Computer Emergency Response Team, the SET. The NCA SET actually was inaugurated by His Excellency the President in 2018, being the first sectorial set in the country. I think we told you in my welcoming speech, we have several regulators that's actually coming to NCA. We have one going on today. We have Rwanda, I believe, next week. There's another one in November. Over the year, they're all coming in here. Please go upstairs and see the automations that we have done, from spectrum monitoring, from broadcast monitoring, from quality of service, common platform, and then the cybersecurity service that we set up. And most of these are actually done with the staff that are locally trained. And then if you go to the Greater Accra office, we also do have our type approval, right? Type approval lab, and we have a whole set of equipment that we do for that. So I want to thank you all. So with that said, again, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank everyone for coming. Right? Thank you for being with us. Please, Mr. Kwame Jan will come in here and will be directed as per the numbers we have here, 1 to 4, and go up and pick up your provisional authorization. Remember, you have what? 60 days, which means that even today, if you are ready, we are also ready for you. Thank you all. God bless you. God bless you.
Thank you, Vivi. And to avoid a rush at the foyer, numbers 1 to 10, if you have numbers 1 to 10 coming into the foyer, John will leave you to the foyer. You have your authorization.
Let's not go there until your numbers have been called. So just 1 to 10 only. Please move to for your authorization.
Therefore, you can please play the videos that we have on the left and video. Please, until the numbers are called, don't go out yet. We don't want to go to avoid a crowd at the front. Thank you.